Hi, and thanks for watching Implementing Plaid in Bubble.io. This is Unit 6, Plaid Link Advanced Features. My name is Brian Alderman. I'm the owner and principal consultant at Lost Sheep Advisory. We're a boutique no-code consulting firm specializing in financial and fintech and business operations solutions. The Plaid plugin you're using is my creation. I'm the developer behind it, as well as the creator of a number of apps, including ivycode.eco, and a couple other things that I've built with other folks. You can reach out and work with lostsheep.dev in a couple ways. When you are using our Plaid plugin, email support is free. Feel free to get in touch at info@lostsheep.dev. We also offer on-demand Bubble office hours that you can book on our website, lostsheep.dev. Full project work to help you execute your vision, and fractional CTO efforts to contribute strategy and expert ownership of your technology. Let's dive into this lesson. In this video, we're going to go through some optional, but generally best practices Plaid features that can help you create the best possible user experience. I've picked 4 of them here that I get asked about most often, and I think these can be really useful to help make your Bubble app work the best for your use case and your users. This video is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a lot more talking and a lot less building in Bubble, just because we're toying around the edges, and there's a lot of different things I want to show you. But all of this is up in the sample app at lostsheep.dev. You can take a look, go see the edit mode, and see more of it. And always, of course, reach out via email, info@lostsheep.dev, if you have any questions. One other note before we get too far into the weeds, you've got to be on plugin version at least 9.0.0 for some of the features here to work. Some of them have been tweaked recently. I released 9.0.0, I think 2 weeks ago. Some of these take advantage of some new features Plaid has pushed out. So make sure to upgrade your plugin before you try to do some of this stuff if you're on an older version of that plugin. So what are we going to cover? The first thing we're going to look at is how to configure your Plaid Link experience and the number of accounts users connect. There's a couple different options that we'll see in a minute. Sometimes you might want to connect all the accounts your user has at a particular bank. Sometimes you might only be interested in one of them. And this relies on a change Bubble or Plaid has made recently that's, I think, pretty exciting and positive, makes some of the things we're doing as Bubble app developers a lot easier. The second thing we're going to do is look at account filters to help make sure you're getting the right accounts for your use case from your users. Then we're going to look at events and error handling to provide the best possible feedback to your users through the process. And then finally, we'll look at customizing some Plaid Sandbox data to give you more confidence in your testing and development of your app. So let's start out with the different Plaid Link experiences. When you've used and poked around lostsheep.dev, you've probably seen when you go in and connect an account, it lists a bunch of the Sandbox accounts. I think there's 9 of them after you've typed in your username and password, and there's multi-check boxes to pick which ones you want to connect to your app. That's actually something you as a developer have the ability to configure depending on your use case. So let's go take a look at how to do that. I'm going to go into the Plaid dashboard here. You go into your own Plaid dashboard, and then under Customize, you can actually change the way this Plaid Link thing works. You can change some of the colors. You can make sure you can update some of the language. Like you can say, instead of to link your bank, you could have some different language potentially. So there's a couple different things you can play with in here, and I encourage you to give them a try, see what will work for your use case. What I'm going to focus on today is the Account Select option here under your Customize options. Account Select has 3 different options, and let's talk through them briefly. Before I do that, though, you might be seeing up at the top here an Account Select V1 and an Account Select V2. That's because, especially if you're creating a new app, Bubble has recently rolled out, or Plaid has recently rolled out a new version of this Account Select screen. I'm already using it in my test app here. This is Account Select V2. If you're not using this already and your app's not yet live, I highly suggest you upgrade now before you get too much further in. To do that, you'll select here Account Select V2 if it shows up, and then under Team Settings and Migrations, you'll just need to click a Migrate button. If you're not live, that's pretty straightforward. If you are live, there's a couple more things you may want to do and test before you do that. Generally, it's going to upgrade pretty smoothly, and Plaid's going to do that for you automatically in March 2022 anyway. So you might as well get a jump on it. I found it to go pretty smoothly, but that's just the background of why you might be seeing two different things here. You want to be on Account Select V2 because it gives you a lot more granularity about which accounts your user picks. There's 3 different view behaviors in here. The first one is enabled for one account. So you see what enabled for one account. It's a radio button here. Your user, once they've successfully put in their username and password, can only pick one account at a time. This might be really good if you're picking, say, a payment account. If you are running transactions off of it, you might want your user to pick a particular account rather than all their checking accounts. So that's the enabled for one account. There's also enabled for multiple accounts, which lets your user pick whichever ones they want to share data with you. So this can be good in certain personal financial management apps, all sorts of different use cases where they might want to connect certain accounts, but not all of them to share with your app. And then finally, there's the enabled for all accounts, which will, once your user connects bank, say Chase Bank, any accounts they have at that bank will automatically be shared in that different view. So what's the right thing to do? Your use case will vary. Again, payments, you might want to do one account. Others, you might want to do multiple accounts. There's a lot more detail. I'll put a link in the lostsheep.dev notes. And you can look at some of this detail here and learn a little more, but I encourage you to change this around as fits your use case. Let's see it in action, right? So I'd had this set on enabled for multiple accounts. Let me change it to one account for now and publish that change. If I go look at the sample app here, and let that refresh. There's nothing I need to change in Bubble. This was a change completely in the Plaid dashboard. If I start a new Plaid Link session here and enter my username and password, I'll see just a single select, so I can only pick one account at a time, versus if I change that back to multiple accounts like it was earlier and publish that change, and then get out a link and start over here. Now I should see, even if I pick the same bank here, now I will, it sometimes takes a minute to propagate. Let me refresh. Let's see, there we go. User good, pass good. And it's still single selecting. But it will change here in a minute. If we give it a second to publish on the Plaid side, this will update automatically. I'm sure as we continue going through this video today, you will see that pop up. So that is configuring your account select view. That's the best way to make it so that all accounts are selected or just one account is selected. So that's the first thing. We've looked at how to configure your Plaid Link experience. Let's now look at account filters. Account filters is a little bit of a complicated subject, so stick with me here. I've just gone over to a Plaid documentation page. I'll link this at the lostsheep.dev site in the video description below. You're probably familiar with the different products in Plaid already. You might be using their transactions product or their auth product or their investments product. And you see there's different account types that match to each product. So auth products are only good for depository accounts. Depository here just means checking, savings, CD, those type of accounts. Whereas transactions is good for depository and credit and loan and other type accounts. And investments only works for investment accounts, for instance. So what this is saying is some products are only matching to certain account types. And indeed, some banks only support certain products with Plaid. So if I go back to the dashboard here and look at the institution status, if I look at, let's pick PNC Bank here. PNC Bank looks like they support almost all the products going on here. Whereas if I pick a bank like, or a financial institution like Vanguard, there's a much smaller product list, only assets, balance, transactions, and investments. When you initiate a product within your Bubble app, so remember back in Plaid Actions, we had some different stuff going on in the Create Link Token step where there was a Plaid product and you put something in here. Let me show another example, a Create Link Token step where we put in a particular product, auth or transactions. Only the institutions that have that product enabled will show up in your Plaid link filter. So if I do something like liabilities, only, let me pull that up. So this button here, this link mortgage button, actually is initiating a liabilities product. So if I open this one up and start a Plaid Link session with it, I'm only going to see banks here that support the liabilities product. So if I looked for Vanguard, for instance, we saw a second ago, Vanguard doesn't support liabilities, so it doesn't show up in my institution list. That's one way you can filter out banks that aren't relevant for your use case, is through the product mapping. Whichever products you're initiating is the first layer of filters of which banks will show up for your users to select from. And that's important to know. If you're not seeing a bank, that might be one reason why. There's a layer below that you can do, however, to get even more granular data. So let me pull up a full bank. This is one without a product filter. I think I'm initiating transactions here or something. And you'll see, just like we saw earlier, see now my checkboxes are back. I told you they'd update. It just took a second for Plaid. But you see all the different account types here: checking, savings, CD, credit, money market, IRA, 401k, student loan, and mortgage. 9 different account types. Because the product I'm initiating here, transactions, this bank supports transactions, so all accounts are shown at this bank. Let me say that one more time a little differently. The list of banks, that very first screen, that list of banks only shows the banks that support the product you're initiating. But the list of accounts, once you've connected to the bank, that list of accounts is not affected by the product you're initiating. Even because remember, if I go back here, look, we saw a 401k account for a second ago, even though we were initiating the transactions product. Those are not compatible, but it still shows up in that list. The way that you limit that list of accounts, so this list here, just pull it up one more time. The way you limit this list of accounts here to only the types that are relevant for your use case is through what's called an account filter. This is a little different than the products that you're initiating through Link, and I want to show you how to initiate that right now so that you can limit which accounts your users connect and make the best possible user experience for them. So if I jump over into Bubble here, this is in my Plaid Actions reusable element, and I've set up a couple custom events here just to show what's going on. Let me look at this mortgage one first, Plaid Link mortgage filter. In this use case, I want my users to only connect mortgage accounts. I'm doing some use case related to just mortgage loan analysis. I don't want them connecting credit accounts or student loan accounts, just mortgage types. So what I'm doing here is, you'll see here's the Create Link Token step, but I've actually used a different action from the plugin. Instead of just Create Link Token, I'm using Create Link Token with filters. And when you're using with filters, there's an additional step down here called Account Filters. And what this says to do is put the output of a Select Account Filters step here. So I've added a Select Account Filters step from the plugin as the first step of this workflow. And this is a box of all of the different account types that Plaid supports. And I can go through and I can check the box of the one that I'm interested in. So in this case, I've just checked mortgage. The documentation says include mortgage loan. And if you don't know what some of these are, there's more details in here. But I just want mortgages for this case. So that's step 1 in this workflow. The result of that goes into the account filters box. Otherwise, this is exactly the same as the Create Link token that we saw in the earlier videos. I'm initiating here the liabilities product because that's what mortgages are under. So I'm interested in the liabilities of that loan. But otherwise, it's the exact same. And I go through and I'm going to use this link token I'm creating to start a new Plaid Link session. That's what this button up here is doing. So when I click on it, let's see what happens. Let me pick Wells Fargo. So as we already talked about, only institutions on that previous page show up that support the liabilities product. Now I see only accounts that are of type mortgage. So even though student loans and credit cards have data available under the liabilities product, because of my account filter, I only see a mortgage loan here, and I can select it and continue and get that connected to my app. So by doing that, I've created a little bit of a better user experience and guided them towards the accounts that I want them to connect. So it's like a second layer. The product is the first layer, shows which banks are enabled, and that account filter is the second layer. Let me show you another example of this, something maybe for a auth or a payments type use case where I want my user to select only a checking account because that's what I can do ACH transactions on. So in this case, very similar. I've got select account filters here. This time I'm only picking checking. I could pick, I could pick more than one here if I wanted to do ACH off savings too. Let me go ahead and pick that savings. Then I'm using this create link token. I'm using the auth product this time because I'm in a payments use case. I've got my account filters coming into this create link token step. And then if I go over here to my sample app, now this is going to show me checking and savings because I've gone and I've checked that savings box as well. So when Plaid Link starts here, I see all the banks that support auth. And then if I pick one, not USAA because it requires more data there, but if I pick one of the banks here in the sandbox, now I'll only see checking and savings accounts that my user can connect, and I can, because I've got the multi-select picked, pick both of them. So I hope you're starting to see here the different layers of ways that you can configure your app to be the best possible user experience for your users through that one account, multi-account, all accounts selection from the Plaid dashboard and through this account filters step that's been added into the plugin. So I hope that's useful so far. So we've looked at how to use account filters now to guide your user to connect relevant accounts. Actually, one more note on that before I go too much further. If I were to go in here, and this is a auth product, but if I were to not select any auth account filters, this isn't going to work. So either if I left this blank or if I tried to do like an auth product with a student loan, that's not a valid combination. Because remember here, depository, auth product, I'm trying to here do a loan product or a loan type account with an auth product or something that's empty. You can see more detail if I go to account type schema here. Here's all of this, right? That's not a valid combination. Plaid's not going to like this very much. I clicked the wrong button. Let me do the checking account one. So you'll see an error here. That's not a valid. See in here it says where account type and account subtype are strings, there must be at least one valid product and account type combination. I've just selected something that's not a valid combination, so I get error messages. So you need to make sure you're picking valid combinations here. So I'll set that back to checking and it would work again. So that's one piece of troubleshooting you might want to look at. You've got to make sure you're using valid combinations of products and account filters. If you don't want to filter the accounts, just use the other create link token one without the filters. This cannot be blank. You'll get errors from Plaid. So that's why there's two different steps in there in the plugin, with filters and without filters. So let's switch gears a little bit. We've looked at how to customize that Plaid Link experience for the users. Now what happens when your users have some issues with that Plaid Link flow for whatever reason? You'll probably find in your app that that's a place a lot of users drop off, is during that Plaid Link flow. They'll, for some reason, not succeed at fixing it. When I talk to folks, I hear that either, oh, I don't know my bank account credentials right now, I need to come back later and do it, or I have trouble with multi-factor authentication, or I don't understand what's going on. So lots of different reasons, but if you want to get a little more insight into what's going on and provide a better user experience, you can use some things called interim events and errors during that Plaid Link process. So let me show you how that works. I'm back up in the reusable element in the sample app. If you remember from earlier videos, we generally worked with the is successful action. New Plaid Link and Plaid updates is successful, and those did things in here in the workflows. You'll notice though, when I click to add a new event under elements, there's two other types. There's a Plaid Link, it has an interim event, and Plaid Link is unsuccessful. And those are two things you can use to get more insights into what your users are doing. Let's start with unsuccessful. So unsuccessful means your user has closed that Plaid Link box before they're successfully able to link an account to your app. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. So whenever the plugin sees this action is unsuccessful, you can have it do something, such as present an error message to your user. How I've set this up is to do exactly that, and to log a little more data in my database. So I want to look at this later for analytics purposes. So I've created a new data type in my database called Plaid Link Events with all these different fields. Again, go look at the sample app if you want to see this in detail. And I'm pulling in the error codes and error messages, all this rich data that Plaid gives me about what's going on. These request IDs might be good for troubleshooting. You might want to engage your user in different ways depending on what kind of error they're running into. Again, your mileage may vary. So I create this Plaid Link event so that I can review it later, and then I set the status of this reusable element to failed. I've got a status custom state. I'm setting it to failed whenever Plaid Link is unsuccessful. And I have a display error here that's this Plaid Link, so this element, the new Plaid Link. Whenever its error display has data in it, error display message is a user-friendly error. It'll show up on my page. Then if I go look at the page that we have in question here, this is again all in the sample app, you can take a look. I've created a error text box here that says no errors normally upon page load. Then it's got two conditionals on it. When the status is failed, it'll show a user, oops, there was a problem connecting to your account, please try again. And when the status is failed and that display error is not empty, so the display error doesn't always populate, it depends on the state the user was in. I'll show you that in a second. If it's not empty, then show that display error, because that's the most contextual thing that I can show to my user and create the best experience for them. Let's see what this looks like in action. So I want to go in here. When I refresh my page, I set it back to a no errors state, right? Then I'm going to start out with any one of these buttons, start a new link flow. I'm engaging that reusable element, the Plaid actions reusable element, and starting to go through the link flow. And I get here and go, wait a minute, I don't know my username and password. I actually want to exit out of here. It asks me if I'm sure. And when I do, my app can change because I changed that state in that workflow we looked at just a second ago. I changed it to failed. And I see here in the error logs, there's my exit error. That's the unsuccessful error. So I can go back and review the data later. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me show you another piece of detail there. If I start another link flow, for instance, and this time I go a little further through it and do bad password. Right, I'm doing something that's going to fail, except on Bank of America in the sandbox it doesn't work, so pick a different bank. Bad password is my password in here. So I get some sort of password error here. Username or password's incorrect. I don't know what it is. I'm going to exit from here. I now get a contextual error because that display message that we set as the state on this reusable element displayed in this text is showing the provided credentials were not correct. Please try again. That's coming from Plaid. It's a little more detail about what's going on. So that's one way you can make the user experience a little better for your users. Let's go back to that workflow again. So we looked at what's going on when Plaid Link is unsuccessful. We created a new Plaid Link event and set the state to Plaid actions. You might have noticed there's one other thing going on here. The other event here is an interim event. What this does is every time the user does something in that Plaid screen, it's not really part of your app, it's part of Plaid's system, this logs an event back in your Bubble database so that you can go back and understand really what are my users doing in those Plaid screens. So this is creating a new event every time the user changes in the Plaid side. So I can actually see that going on here. This table, just for an example in the sample app, is a list of everything that was going on. So I can go back down through and see they opened it up. They got the consent page. They went to the select institution. They selected an institution. They transitioned. Then they exited. And I could look at this too from the database and look at my Plaid Link events and see some different stuff going on here where I had a transition view and I had users exiting and erroring. So you can use this to get a better sense of what's going on, see what banks they're trying to connect to. It's an advanced feature that you may find helpful to provide the correct context back to your users. What I often do, I keep those dev events on, and I'll do, because this can have a performance impact, I wouldn't necessarily leave these on in production. I'll often do a only when on this workflow for the interim events, only when isn't live version is yes. So only in my development versions will this run. I'll leave the unsuccessful running because I like that state. I like that failed error message from my user. But I wouldn't necessarily want all the events all the time. And then I can use my logs for troubleshooting when I'm developing and have a good experience for my users and get an idea what's going on based on the error type events that happen. That's all pretty complicated. If you have questions about it, please do get in touch. This is really for advanced use cases, that piece of it, but wanted to show you so that you have it. I also have hinted here a little bit at that status usage where I've got failed here when it's unsuccessful. You can also use that to be the successful pieces. So you'll see in here, there's a set state of Plaid actions here to success. That's part of this. Maybe I would do when the page is loaded, set the state of Plaid actions to pending or clear it out completely. Or maybe when I start a new Plaid Link session, maybe I would set the state of it to Plaid actions status is in progress. Right, so this status as part of this reusable element, this status custom state, is something I'll often use with this reusable element approach, just to make it a little easier to build my app the right way, to make it so that on my pages where that, which page were we on? There we are. So that these pages where I'm actually building functionality for users that use that reusable element over and over again, so that I have the right context here and can put the right error messages in place. I've also seen folks put the error handling directly into that reusable element where they'll have it provide a pop-up with the error message when something goes wrong. These are all valid approaches, but just wanted to show you a couple tips and tricks to how to use those. Let's look at the last thing. We've looked at how those events and errors work during the Plaid linking process. One last thing we want to do is look at customizing Plaid Sandbox data to be more relevant to your use case. If you have spent any time working with the Plaid Sandbox, and that's what all this stuff in the sandbox or in the demo app connects to is Plaid Sandbox. It's all demo data. You may have found some of that data is a little lacking. It doesn't have all the detail you might need, the particular scenario you might need. For instance, the transactions only have, I don't know, it's in the transactions product, it's like 12 or 15 transactions each month to play with. That might not be quite what you're looking for, or it's not the right kind of transaction data. Or for your liabilities, if you're working with a mortgage or a student loan account, that data is not quite the way you want it to work. So you can actually put your own custom data into the Plaid Sandbox. And I want to show you how to do that now in case you need it. I've got a couple samples down here in the documentation page linked in the description of this video. There's one with a liabilities data. So this will give me 2 accounts, a credit account and a student loan account with these particular settings. I've got one down here that provides a checking account with regular income if I'm building something like an income testing product or a lending product using the transactions and want to understand that. It also sets up MFA in all use cases. And then I've got a much larger payload here with a lot more transactions to process if you're doing something a little more maybe realistic than the transactions data, or if you want something a little different. So how do you actually set these up? There's two different ways I want to show you. They're both back in your Plaid dashboard. Under Team Settings and Sandbox, you'll see you can create Sandbox users. So in here, I've already created one here, Custom Liabilities, and I have put in that payload. This is the same thing from here, from the lostsheep.dev site, and I want to play with different account setup. I want to see a credit card and a student loan data with this information in it. Once I've set that up in my app, when I'm in the Sandbox environment, all I have to do is, during Plaid Link, instead of user good and pass good, I'm going to type in custom liabilities, because that's what I named my user here, is custom liabilities, and any password. I usually stick with user good. And when I do that, you'll see, not all of these banks work all the time. This is custom liabilities. Just do good, right? There we go. So that's that custom data that I set up in the Plaid Sandbox. It's just the credit card and the student loan, and I can pick them both to pull into my app and play with my use case that way and do the testing that you need. There is a lot more data about how to set these up in Plaid's documentation. You can go in here and visit the docs, and there's a whole bunch in here about customizing Sandbox user data and what all the different fields are. It's just a JSON object. You can have this do really whatever you want. I've tried to make it a little easier by giving you a couple samples in the lostsheep.dev that have been useful to me over my time building in Bubble, but your mileage may vary. The other thing I want to show you, other than those custom accounts that you set up in your Plaid dashboard here, you can also do this on the fly. So I could link a new account and do the words custom, or I can do the words user custom. And in the password, I've copied that configuration from my website and I'm pasting into the password that entire JSON object. And when I do that, it's going to connect that custom object to my account. So this is good for like one-off testing or sometimes automation testing. If I have a particular configuration that I want to use that I don't want to set up in the Plaid dashboard, you can configure it that way. So that's one way you can get some of these more specific data setups you might need for your use case. Again, if you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out. I'll help as I can. But the Plaid docs are pretty good on that. And I hope that is helpful. So we've covered a couple things in this video. It's been pretty in-depth, a little bit of a different video for you. We've looked at how to configure your Plaid Link experience using the Customize feature in your Plaid dashboard, in particular to change, do customers connect one account, multiple accounts, or all of their accounts when they link a bank through Plaid Link. We've looked at how account filters work in your Bubble app to select which particular account types you want your user to select versus all of the available account types that are relevant to your product. We've looked at how to handle interim errors and events during that Plaid Link process to give you more insights into what your users are doing and create more friendly user experiences when Plaid Link doesn't quite go the way that it should for those users, or if they run into issues along the way, to help them be successful using your app. And we've looked at how you can use the Plaid Sandbox data to have more relevant data for your use case and improve your testing and development process. I hope that's been helpful. Again, reach out at info@lostsheep.dev if you run into any problems or have any questions along the way, and I'll do the best I can to help you out. Thank you so much for watching.